Greetings, I'm Neoslice, and I just played and completed Alone in the Dark 2024, or Alone in the Dark Remake. So let me start by saying this review, or opinion, will have two parts. The first part has no spoilers, and the second part will be marked as spoilers. So if you wanna avoid spoilers, check out the timestamps down below. Please keep in mind that reviews are always personal opinions and that you shouldn't use this video as an official rating of the game. This is my pure personal opinion based on my own experience. If you want a more accurate depiction of the game, please try it yourself. First of all, let's start by saying that this game looks really good in certain areas. The characters, they don't look amazing. They're not like, RE Engine level. They're not realistic. I would say it's more like a style. It definitely goes towards the more realistic-y type of faces. Seeing how the main characters are actual actors, David Harbour and Jodie Comer. They, I can tell it's them, but I can also tell that they're kind of fake, right? So I'm not too picky on graphics myself. The graphics are fine, in my opinion. A lot of the areas in this game look absolutely amazing, inside and outside. But yeah, in the graphic front, I was sometimes finding myself very immersed, and other times I was not so much. And I would say, in terms of graphics, the game does a good job. It's not amazing, but it's also not terrible. So if you're someone who's picky about graphics, you probably won't have any complaints about this game, other than maybe the characters themselves. So let's talk about gameplay. In terms of gameplay, this game has a lot of good things and many bad things. So once again, in my own personal experience, I really enjoyed the first few moments of this game, exploring, and it felt like this was gonna be the game, right? Solving puzzles, reading files, finding clues inside of the files. It felt familiar to me as a horror game fan, Resident Evil connoisseur. To me, it felt familiar, and it felt very well paced. I was interested, into the story. I knew going in that I would be facing a game that isn't strictly focused on combat, but it would be more on the narrative part of things, right? But I didn't really expect it to be so focused on reading rather than, experiencing the game and experiencing the story via gameplay. So in terms of puzzles and things like that, I really enjoyed the puzzles. Some of them were kind of scripted, others were really fun, and they would put you in a room and you would have to figure it out yourself, like the painting and the astrological signs, whatever they're called, Pisces and Cancer and all those. I really enjoyed and felt like I was being rewarded for paying attention, for actually discovering the puzzle. But other puzzles were kind of on the meh side. Like, without spoiling too much, there's an X-ray puzzle where you have to line up 3 X-ray pictures. And I spent like 10 minutes on that puzzle, not because it was difficult, but it was like just frustrating. And I'm not bad at puzzles myself. Like I said, I've experienced all kinds of puzzles for the past 28 years of my life. So yeah, I think that I just didn't really like some of the puzzles, but for the most part they were fun. They were good. In terms of combat, I felt like the combat was very bad. I thought I could just run past enemies at first, as you saw there in the gameplay, but turns out you really can't. Also, I found a glitch where you can just sit in certain areas and enemies won't attack you, but you can still damage them. So yeah, overall, every single enemy, excluding the final boss, felt like I could just walk past or, stun them and not, engage in any type of combat. Now, you might be thinking, but that's how Resident Evil is, right? Well, yes and no. In this case, in Resident Evil, that's intended. In this case, it isn't. Like, I really didn't have to engage in any combat. I played on hard difficulty, and the game didn't really feel any difficult at all to me. Like, it wasn't difficult at all. It's meant to give you less resources, but then there's the scripted resources that they give you, and sometimes they even give you infinite resources, like infinite access. So nothing about hard mode was hard, but at least exploring looked pretty nice. I enjoy exploring, but a lot of the time it was ruined by having to sit through a 10-minute audio log. Like, I understand that it's a narrative driven game, and trust me, I love narrative and story. One of my favorite games is Alan Wake 2, which I'll talk about in a second. But I feel like lore is great when it's spaced out, when you get a good amount of gameplay, a good balance between gameplay and lore and story, right? So a game, before anything else, it has to be fun. And if you interrupt that fun so often, it's not fun anymore. It becomes annoying. I want to be able to play and experience the game at my own pace and the story at my own pace. And don't get me wrong, you can skip all of the audio stuff. I'm not saying, just listen to everything if you want to experience the game. But, I wanted to know the story. I wanted to know the backstory.
Right?
I wanted to know more about the world. And I think knowing the lore and the background of the story and the world adds to the gameplay. It makes me enjoy the gameplay more. That's why I wanted to take it all in, right? And I often felt like it was too much. Like, I don't want to sit there for 5 to 10 minutes listening to a story about the background of America and how it affected the mansion, right? Sure, I would love to be given that information in small portions so that as I'm progressing through the game in my gameplay, I can see it in the world and also read it in the files. This game sometimes has 2 to 3 files in one room, and they're all super long. And like I said, don't get me wrong, I appreciate that it's all voice acted, so I don't have to read it myself. But sometimes the voice actors felt like they were taking so long that they were adding a double the amount of time it would take for me personally to read these files. And that was a hindrance to my gameplay. And I felt like I wasn't enjoying the game to its fullest because I had to sit through 3 hours of dialogue. Anyway, dialogue aside, I think the story was kind of meh. I was really interested in the fantastical aspect of it, the Lovecraftian mythos and, all of that cool stuff. I'm really interested in. I like the metaphors of, the boat or whatever, all the psychological real things that are relatable and easy to understand and, very fun to depict in a video game because you get to actually see it, right? Traveling to other places and dimensions, going through these portals and going through someone's memories, or Jeremy's memories, the metaphoric way of storytelling. I'm a big fan of that. But I just felt like all of those files that I read, some of them were very important and they added to my gameplay. Well, others were just kind of, pointless. And I could have played the whole game without having, without reading them. So I feel like it just kind of ruined my perception of the story in a way, or at least it made it feel a little bit bitter. It made me feel a little bit bitter because I had just sat through so much lore that didn't matter in the end, where, I could have just experienced it through the gameplay. And yeah, in terms of story itself, I just felt like once again the writers had a really good idea and they didn't execute it that well. That's pretty much my opinion on Alone in the Dark. I think Alone in the Dark 2024 is a game that could have been amazing, but it just turned out to be okay. And that is pretty much my own opinion on it. Now let's talk about spoilers. Okay, the following segment will contain some spoilers. All right. Well, like I said before, all of that time spent reading and assimilating the story ended with a very, very boring final boss fight. And it just felt like they didn't know what to do for chapter 5. And they were like, oh, by the way, yeah, Cthulhu 3 monster final boss. And then the gameplay wasn't even that fun. It was like the gameplay of the mechanics of the boss. They were just kind of like, you could tell that the engine or whatever, the game wasn't built for an action boss fight. And that boss fight is very spammy. Like the tree spawns in enemies, it hits you, it throws fires at you. And your character just kind of moves super slow, reloads super slow. Hold on, I'm just, reloading my gun. I can't shoot you. But anyway, in terms of hard difficulty, that is the hardest difficulty. I played my first playthrough on hard difficulty and I was never on the verge of dying unless I purposely threw myself at the death. And for example, the part in the library place with the dark man following you around with his black mist, that just felt like the game was broken because I couldn't progress. I went up, I went down, the guy would still get me through the walls, the guy would still get me, down the hallway. I ended up dying, my only death, because I thought, okay, well, I'm just gonna run to him then. And I died in the game because I didn't know how to progress and I went every way. But it turns out all you had to do was literally just take damage and run past him before he blocks the way. So that part, keep in mind that all these things that I'm complaining about could be fixed in the future. This is a pre-patch review on PC. And yeah, by the way, it runs fine on PC. I only ran into some issues getting stuck, like in some things, like some objects, my character would just stop moving and I had to like reload my save. But other than that, the AI sometimes I would get stuck in animations. Like I would walk towards a corner of the map and the enemies would stop following me around. And like for example, in the foggy town, that was my favorite place, by the way. The foggy 1930s town, that was the best. Like it looks amazing. The fog and all that. A lot of the places in the game look beautiful and stunning. Even when you're in the final area in the snow with the Aurora Borealis, that looked amazing. I was never a fan of snowstorms in video games, but that part felt really cool. In conclusion, what I like and I don't like about Alone in the Dark 2024, I would say this game is a solid 6.5 out of 10. I don't think it's absolutely worth getting right now, unless you get it for very cheap, like $20. Other than that, stay away from it. It's not worth it. Watch a playthrough, because $70, it is absolutely not worth it. Unless you're a fan of the series, then you'll probably enjoy it. So that's my honest opinion. Let me know what you think about it in the comments down below. Of course, you're free to disagree, but keep in mind, it's my own opinion. It's not an official rating of the game. If you want to experience it yourself, play it. Or if you like the game, that's great. I just didn't that much. But I finished it, and I'm actually excited to play as Emily. And I know the game adds more lore and more depth to the whole experience when you play both campaigns. So by the time you read this, I probably will have had played the whole campaign on Emily's side as well. But I highly doubt the gameplay will change much. So please consider subscribing if you haven't already. I have a lot of guides, gameplay, and I do live stream very regularly. So stay tuned by clicking the bell. Hit the like button if you want to help me out, or dislike it if you hate me for my opinion. It helps my video either way. So anyway, I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.